everybody. Welcome to episode number 3 of the Ike Larry Paranormal Show and whatever else we decide to talk about. Hello, Larry. How's it going?
I'm doing well, Ike. Yourself?
I'm hanging in there. Our first video, I think, has like 80 some odd views, 90 views. So there's 90
Oh,
people that
good start.
actually watch this nonsense, which is pretty weird. The
It's
second
amazing
video,
in and of itself.
yeah, the second video, I don't know. I think it's gradually working its way up there, but we're going to keep on going. I
Tell your
decided to
friends,
throw out,
folks.
yes, yes, tell your friends. A quick disclaimer on my behalf is I'm not an expert in anything. Those are just my opinions I'm throwing out, and I come across as a little forceful. Some people tell me, like I'm trying to force my opinion on people. I do not. You have your own thoughts, your own free will, and you do whatever the hell you feel like. I'm just throwing stuff out there and see if it sticks to the wall. Just because I believe in something does not mean you have to believe in something, or vice versa.
But see, that's important, Ike, because that's the one thing we have lost in this country, and that's the ability to have civil discourse, to sit and talk and maybe not agree, but still continue to talk. And that's something maybe we can influence on this show, getting folks to just talk, even when they don't agree.
100% correct. And especially us being cops, we're kind of A-driven personalities anyway. We try to be, like it's our point. That's what we do. We're macho, that kind of thing. And we may
So
come
what's yours?
across that. Well, you don't, but I may come across as just being an asshole who tries to force his opinions. You either believe me or you don't, and it's not the case at all. So you just decide what you want to believe in. We just talk about crap, and we talk about a lot of crap.
Hmm.
Especially Larry. Larry's a crap talker.
Ouch, ouch, ouch,
Yeah.
ouch. Nice. I like that. Folks, if you didn't know it, this guy does some incredible metal etchings. I think you saw an example of it there. He's very talented gentleman. Don't ask me to say that again. So,
Yeah, it's here. I'll send you your $10 that you asked for.
yeah, that's 15.
15. Fuck that. Anyway, also, like I said, this show is not for the faint of heart or easily offended. If you're easily offended, then get the fuck out of here.
Leave the
Uh,
kids off the show.
let's start little trailer park kids. They're pretty rough. They're tough. They can put up some shit. They probably hear a lot worse at home. So anyway, we're going to talk. We usually open the show with talk about the latest news in paranormal, and we've had some technical glitches and stuff throughout the week. This internet stuff is driving me crazy. New Mexico is a third world country, if you didn't know. We're just like Florida, except for we're even more rural. And getting decent internet to work out here is almost impossible unless you get Starlink, and I'm not willing to lay out $700 for Starlink.
That's expensive. Yeah, but you're coming through really well now. It's
It's
good,
because I've
good
channeled
audio.
forces from above, and
Channel,
I'm
channel.
sitting on a pyramid.
Yeah, yeah.
Crystal, crystal.
We've got some interesting stuff to talk about today, though. I'm kind of
We're going to talk about, well, the first thing in the news that I keep coming across, and I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are after you tell me your thoughts, is the alien in your neck of the woods at the mall. So supposedly, if you want to lay down
mhm.
the foundation, the story of what exactly happened over there.
Yeah. I think it was actually January 1st. They had an event at the Bayside Mall in Miami, and they got pictures of like 30, 40 city of Miami cars responding, police cars responding, cops all over the place, people running. The initial call was a fight involving juveniles and the setting off of firecrackers. But then there was talk about a 10-foot figure being seen walking through the mall, and supposedly some very grainy, blurry photographs or videos taken of this creature walking through the mall. You really can't tell what it is. But what's got everybody really, really excited is there's a couple folks that have gotten on YouTube, whatnot, TikTok and stuff saying, we saw this. But there are really no solid photographs or videos of anything. City of Miami says it was just kids that were shooting off firecrackers and stuff like that. And probably the biggest thing that I'm hearing from folks is, why were there so many police cars if it was just kids? Folks, you got to take something into consideration here. In today's world, when you have a large scale possible event going on, you hear firecrackers, maybe mistaken for gunfire. They're going to
Yeah.
send everybody. That's
Yep.
just the way it is. They're going to send everybody to a situation like that. So I personally am not overly surprised there were that many cars there. Mall, lots of people, possible gunfire. I'm not surprised with that. It's just the way we are now. We respond in force everywhere when something like this happens. Um, the word I'm getting from folks I know down there is that it's all it was, and folks are trying to make something out of it that it is.
Was there any eyewitnesses interviewed that claimed to have seen something that I
No,
know?
that none that were interviewed that I can find, like for by law enforcement. There's folks that have gotten on the internet and have made statements regarding what happened, but I have yet to see a definitive photograph. That's the other thing too. And I realize we talked about this last week. Sometimes people freak out, or they freeze, or they don't think to hit the record button. But with all the people in that mall and folks actually getting on there saying they saw some things, I can't believe somebody didn't take a picture. Um, could you say, well, they were all suppressed? You could, and
That's the claim
but
I
you're not.
heard.
Yeah, but you're not gonna suppress everybody, Ike.
Yeah. The
There's gonna
claim
be
is that
somebody.
everybody's cameras were malfunctioning because of some weird electronic pulse or something. I don't know.
And why
That's
wasn't the camera? Why wasn't that camera from from
the police
looks like
cars
a
pulling up.
helicopter? Yeah. Why doesn't why why?
Like I
I
said,
think we
I
need.
don't know much. Like I said, I don't know too much about the incident except for what I've seen on the news or YouTube. There was another
Yeah.
person that said there was a guy in the mall painting a mural at the time, and
Mhm.
he seen a group of kids opening up a device that looked a lot like a DVD player. And when they opened it up, it created a flash of light, almost like a bubble of light, sort of like a portal thing. But that's just third hand story I've heard. I've never seen an interview where actually somebody's talking to this guy.
Yeah, I think that we need to be careful of those types of claims without some, because you're talking about an event here that could cause a panic. And before we get excited about believing this, we've got to have something a little more substantial to look at. Um, Once again, I got an open mind. I'm not gonna say things aren't possible, but I know people, you know people, a mall full of folks, somebody is going to take something that's going to get out. My God, how do you think those videos of the Tic Tac UFOs
Yeah.
got out? Somebody leaked that, and that was from a government agency. You're telling me some kid or some teenager that's in there videotaping is not going to somehow get something out?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Speaking of the TikToks, well, I don't want to transition just yet, but
Okay.
another thing about the alien thing over there, um, yeah, I lost my train of thought now because you mentioned TikTok. See what happens when you mention TikTok. But on the alien thing in Miami, I call bullshit. I really do. But there's just too many people involved. Somebody, oh, that's where I was going to go. Somebody else said that the GPS coordinates where these aliens supposedly disappeared, if you enter it backwards, comes back to Antarctica somewhere, some hidden base out. I'm like, man, I could take any GPS coordinates and enter it backwards, and it'll come up somewhere interesting.
Well,
That's
that goes back to playing AC/DC on the phonograph table backwards and hearing messages when you play the music
that's
backwards.
Stairway to Heaven, my good man.
Yes,
That's
is that whatever it was? Okay,
ACDC. Jesus.
whatever, whatever. The point. You understand the point.
I understand. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But reverse messaging in songs was actually a real thing. We could do a whole episode on that.
yeah,
They did it
it was.
intentionally. It was done
Yeah,
intentionally
and why do you think it was done intentionally, Ike? Why do
because
you think it was
people
done
buy them and
intentionally?
play them backwards. It's a good sell.
Bingo,
Yeah,
bingo.
because a lot of them didn't have satanic messages. They just had messages like "I love you."
Yeah.
Hey, if you play this Chicago song backwards, it says "I love you." That's cool. I'll buy it. I was watching a debunking video on YouTube about the TikToks, and this guy is a physicist. So he's a scientist, and he debunks all of this stuff. No, he's an extreme non-believer debunker. So he's so painted into that corner. He's got confirmation bias big time, and
Mhm.
his explanations are amazing on those TikTok videos. It's all just image glare from the cameras. The cameras are moving. The objects aren't going that close to the object that was supposedly going into the water was really 14,000 feet up in the air. And it just appears to be going fast, but it's not going fast. It's more likely a mylar balloon. This guy just debunked every single thing that came out. And I'm thinking, my God, these guys are pilots. They're ranking officers consistently, constantly. And now you have some pinhead with a degree saying it's all fake. So Who do you believe there?
Well, once again, I would have to see his analysis for him to just say this is that it isn't going as fast as you think it is. I would have to have him explain it to me why that's the case. If that's true, let's get it out. See, and that's the problem I have. We've talked about this ad nauseum before. You get folks on one side of it that says every bump and sound is paranormal, and you get somebody on the other side that no matter what you show them, it's not going to be paranormal. Folks, tell us why. Tell us why the face you saw in that window is definitely your Aunt Gertrude. Tell us why that
my,
TikTok is moving us.
my Aunt
Tell
Gertrude.
us why that Gertrude, whatever. Tell us why that TikTok is not moving as fast. Explain it to us. Just don't say it based upon the letters behind your name. And I'm not trying to insult this gentleman. He may be right. But folks, let's talk turkey and let's talk fact and let's talk hard evidence.
You really want to go down the rabbit hole. What if he's a disinformation officer from the NSA or CIA or any of those three-letter
Well,
agencies that are? What if he's just out there, just go out there and talk some shit? Because he explains it really well. He shows the
well,
camera pods that are mounted underneath the F-16 or the
yeah.
F-18 Hornets. And he says when the
Mhm.
pod moves this way, it looks like the object on the other side is going the opposite direction. And I'm like, I think the pilot would know that. I mean, these pilots carry live ordnance a lot of times. I think they're pretty certain of what they're seeing and what they're shooting at.
Well, and that's what those pods do. It shows you what you're shooting at. And once again, I'm certainly not have that level of expertise or intelligence, but you're putting a gentleman or a male or female, I won't say gentleman, but a pilot in those aircraft. Their job is to put, you know, bombs on the target. They ought to
Yeah.
know how that stuff works. So I agree with you in that sense. But if he's got a logical reason why that wouldn't be the case, tell me. Let's debate. Let's get somebody on both sides of it. Let's have an intelligent civil discourse about what it is. Let's not just both sit on both sides. I sorry, I
Right.
get on my soapbox here.
You look a little taller. I think you're sitting on your soapbox.
All right. Yeah, yeah. It's just pe- people are too quick to voice their opinions and say, "I'm right, you're wrong. There's no other answer." That's nuts. We got to start talking to each other, and we've got to start examining this stuff. We have to start sharing information and looking at it with an open mind and logically, and come to an answer. And that's oh boy. Now you're getting me into my world of let's standardization and paranormal investigation, so that we're all on the same page. That's a different
That's
show.
kind of brings it back to my opening. I'm not an expert. So you can
Yes,
show
none
me
of us are.
whatever you want, but if I'm not on your level or have your expertise in astrophysics, then you can blow all kinds of smoke up my butt. And
Mhm,
I don't know if it's true or not. In the same way, the other way around. I can tell you things that you may not know that I've experienced, and
mhm.
it's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. But don't tell me that you're absolutely correct and this is what it is, because it may not be.
Well, I think that's another important thing too, Ike, is there are no experts in this field. There are none. There's people that are maybe more experienced or have certain areas of greater expertise in some areas, but there's no profound expert in the field of paranormal investigation, whether it be UFOs and ghosts, cryptids. There's not because we don't have enough answers yet. So
And
anybody that, huh?
you're right. You're right. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and it's just another bug. We're not experts. We're still all learning. We're still trying to find the answers to this. We don't even know the baseline of where this all starts yet,
Hmm.
much less being able to proclaim yes or no on anything.
Yeah. And that's kind of what the premise of this show is, because there's a million shows out there with a million people coming on as guests, and they're all telling their stories and convincing or try to convince you that their story is real. There's just tons of people out there that are doing this, and there's
Mhm.
some of them are probably real. Your last guest on your other show was I found him pretty interesting. Uh,
Oh, Mark Nesbitt.
Gettysburg guy.
Oh man, he is terrific. He
I mean, if
and
any
he
place
looks
is haunted, Gettysburg probably haunted.
well, and I think that's so important because of what happened there, and that goes into the theory. Once again, folks, theory, not definitively proven, but the theory that energy is transferred, stored, kept. And the Gettysburg area is full of granite and things like that. That is, in theory, quartz that it can hold energy. Wow. Yeah, and Mark had some great stories. If Ghosts of Gettysburg, I'll give him a plug for his books. Great guy, really knowledgeable, and very level-headed about things. So,
If somebody wanted to listen to this guy, how did he find him on your show? Give your
oh yeah,
show out.
yeah. My show, it's Paranormal Stakeout. You can go to Ghost. What is it? Paranormalstakeout.org. That's got all my shows on it. That's a show that I do in the X Zone, where I interview some really cool guests. Ike's been a guest on there, I might add. And you can catch Mark Nesbitt on there. And I've got a couple of other guests that really go into some way above my head, but some very deep discussion on what the whole phenomenon is. But Mark Nesbitt was super interesting. Really recommend you listen to that interview I had with him. Once again, that's paranormalstakeout.org. You can also, if you go to Larry Lawson Interviews on YouTube, you'll see a lot of my shows. And I think Mark's the last one that's up there also.
Just on Google him, you'd have to go past all his criminal records and all that stuff. So it'll be like at the very end, probably.
Or,
You know, it is when you Google somebody, all kinds of weird stuff comes up.
Yeah, that's true. But half it's not true, I promise. But getting back to Gettysburg and just the hauntings there, that really goes against a theory that a lot of people have, that a place is haunted simply because there was tragedy there. Now that certainly occurred there, but there's very little structure there that's actually there's some, but most of the ghosts are seen in the open field.
Yeah.
And going back to what I was going to say, one of my biggest theories is most of the time, or often I should say, paranormal activity is not the result of a structure, but it's the land and the energy, or somehow the connection to the land. Uh,
We've
my
kind of
theory.
touched on that a little bit last episode when I mentioned water. Water
Oh
is
yeah,
tied in
yeah.
with paranormal activity, at least
Mhm.
in my case, in my personal experience. And I've mentioned this on many other shows before. I'm a big believer in mineral rich areas that high on any minerals like metal, gold, silver, copper, lead, all that stuff.
Uh,
Gold mining areas, claiming areas, or mining areas in general are seem to be very energetic. There's a lot of energy there. You've been there, and you can
yeah,
feel it.
yeah. Oh,
There's
unbelievable.
something about the soil there that
Hmm.
contains all. And it's like quartz. Mineral areas are always with quartz, and quartz is what a natural battery.
Yeah, well,
You know,
and let's go back on that a little bit. Remember the quartz watches? People still wear them. What is a quartz watch? It's a mineral that just keeps your watch running, right?
if you
Energy.
strike quartz, it produces electricity, piezoelectricity. So quartz is one of those weird things. Crystal quartzes. There's a reason many years ago in the pagan days, people already collected quartz, and quartz
Mhm.
crystals especially. They've always
Mhm.
held some kind of form of energy, even back in the days where people didn't understand what the heck was going on as far as storing electricity goes. So
Well,
in quartz, like
going
my mining area where I mined out there, and you came to visit that time, there's quartz literally everywhere. There's blocks and rocks and boulders of quartz. So why wouldn't that be just one big energy field out there?
well, and you mentioned water a few minutes ago. Dowsing rods, which we use a lot of times on our investigations, they've been using dowsing rods for generations, centuries to find water. How does a stick or two pieces of metal find water? It's all about energy that's emanating from it. So, it's
And there's a lot of wavelengths of energy that we don't see or experience or feel necessarily. So we don't.
Mhm.
Once again, we don't even know what we're dabbling with, and maybe some scientists can come over here and explain it to us, but I still probably wouldn't understand it. There's
Well,
energy out there that we get radiated by all freaking day long, and you don't even pay any attention to these lights shining on me or spreading energy on me right
well,
now.
electromagnetic energy is everywhere. I mean, radio waves, all of that is connected, and that's why people like Tesla, Edison, to some extent,
Nicholas,
uh, yep,
Nicholas Tesla, he did a
Tesla,
lot of crazy stuff.
Tesla. Yeah, he did, but he also was a firm believer in what this energy can do, and what we can accomplish. Maybe contacting the other side, whatever this issue is, whatever this phenomenon is, different dimensions. Getting back into the last show already, but important. It's stuff to look at, and back on my soapbox. We spend so much time arguing about it. let's all get together, get on the same page, come up with a protocol that we can all agree with, and start studying this a little bit more. And there may be people out there that are doing it, but we don't know about it.
Right,
So,
right. And we'll never get everybody on the same page because the paranormal field I compare it to the probably law enforcement field. It's very ego driven. It's very who am I?
yeah,
What have I done? Where have I been? Type
I, I,
type thing.
I'll,
And
I'll agree
everybody,
with you.
if you watch enough paranormal shows, you'll realize that they're all trying to outdo each other constantly. And
Oh,
not just
God,
the
yeah.
big shows, not just televised shows, but just go to YouTube and find a million different shows, much like ours. And everybody's trying to outdo the other person. I'm like, this is not a competition.
No,
You
it
know,
shouldn't be a
I,
competition. And that's where I'll disagree with you on comparing the law enforcement field with the paranormal field. Yes, you are right about the egos and stuff, no question. But what happens in our field, Ike, when there's now a murder committed, let's just say up in Washington State? We'll hear about it down here, and there's a standardization of doing things, i.e., you and my favorite this is my favorite description. Some of you may have heard this before. You have a homicide, let's just say in Edgewood, New Mexico, right? And then you have a homicide here in Vero Beach. There's going to be some differences because of laws and procedures required by state statute, but essentially, aren't we going to investigate that homicide the same way?
probably 99% of the time.
There you go.
I've seen homicides, murderers go free or unsolved because of interagency rivalries between sheriffs and
Yes.
especially municipalities, because sheriffs claim they're the best, municipalities claim they're the best, and then you get state police involved, and state police says we're not getting involved in
Yeah,
this fight, and then it just goes around and around. And I've actually seen cases go to the wayside because of stuff like that.
I have too, but don't you think that is more in the past? I mean, it's always going to occur. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen today, but don't you think it's a whole lot better today because we've got more standardization
Yeah,
in
cameras.
how we do things?
When
Cameras,
you say
well, no,
standardization, you mean cameras.
no, not necessarily. I mean, let's face it. You have a symposium put on by a guy that does homicide work, and he's well known, and he puts on a seminar in Las Vegas. And
Hmm.
you get people from all over the country that'll come there and listen to what he's doing and listen. So that kind of sets the stage for folks getting on the same page.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to get rid of ego. I'll agree with you there, and you're never going to get rid of everybody saying, "Hey, I don't want to lose my moment in the sunshine." I get that, but dang it,
I'm a
we got
little,
to
I'm a,
find a.
I'm a little bit tainted when it comes to that. Working at the DA's office, one of my tasks was to investigate bad police officers throughout the district. And
As
our
did I
district was
when I.
huge, you know,
Yeah.
and I've nailed quite a few cops. And we put them in prison, and it's so easy because most law enforcement is military organized, has a military structure, through the
Mhm.
ranks and all that stuff. But the essence is that the lowest on the totem pole, once you set them loose in a police car, is a supervisor of sorts. He's going out there and telling people what to do, how to do it, and when to do it.
Mhm.
So it's real easy for that to go amok and run out of control. And I don't even know how we got off on the subject, but it's a pet peeve of mine because everybody, there's so many people say most of the police is good, trust the police are good people. And I'm telling you, I've seen cops that have done some really, really vicious, bad things. And those people are the ones you're
Mhm.
supposed to trust. I'm like, oh my God,
Wow.
these people they deserve the Florida treatment. They deserve the death penalty. I've
Well,
seen some
you're
bad
right.
stuff.
A crooked cop is worse than a criminal, and we're kind of getting off into that area
Absolutely.
of and anything else we want to talk about. But there's bad in everything. And
Oh,
if you,
yeah.
this is not a ghost, this is not a ghost you're seeing. That's Cooper. So this is the for you
Oh,
folks
he's
out
a
there.
tail.
This is
Oh,
Cooper. Say hello,
what a great.
Cooper. That's that's
It's a cool
so
dog.
she decided she's wanted some attention. So sorry about that. Um, but there's bad in everything, and maybe this is a great way to bring this together. There are knuckleheads in the paranormal field. Certainly, there are knuckleheads in law. Not only was I, you call it a DA investigator, we call them state attorneys here. I was a state attorney investigator, did the same thing, that you did with bad cops and stuff like that. And there's no question, bad cops worse than a criminal. and they need to be punished. But we're dealing with one commonality, whether it's the paranormal field, whether it's the law enforcement field, education, medicine, people. There are bad people out there, and and we've
Absolutely.
and and we've got to do what we can to police that and stop those folks that are acting unethically. Um, and yes, there are knucklehead cops. I'm not. I've seen my fair share, and trust. I ran the police academy for many years, and I had to be very, very careful who I let in many times. But it's just now I've kind of lost my train of thought there. But it's just that we cannot. At least in law enforcement, we've got a structure. When we find somebody, okay, that's done something wrong, not saying it always works, but we have a methodology with which to remove them from the system.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
just one thing I'd like to add. We're kind of off subject with the whole police thing, and we could do a whole episode on there. But one thing, being a career cop and retiring from the police force in several different agencies, so I kind of have a gamut on what I've worked for big agency and small agencies. But one thing was always the same in all agencies is the amount of post-traumatic stress that cops endure. And I used to say this back in the younger days, even. I said, so many times you're out there at a fatal and you're stepping over dead bodies. You might be pulling little kids or babies out of a car that are deceased. And then 2 hours later, you're at home in bed with your wife. And she's like, "How was your night, baby?" And you're going to not tell her what happened. You're going to say, "Oh, it was okay." The stuff all stays up here. Now you multiply that times 25, you have more shit in your head than some of the hardest combat veterans. Combat veterans got to go back to their freaking platoon. They got to debrief with each other. They got drunk. And the next day they went out and did it again. You didn't. You went home to your wife or your kids or your apartment by yourself and got drunk to deal with this stuff. That's why there's so many strange, crazy cops out there, because it's bottlenecking, and there's no help for them. There's absolutely no help. But that's my soapbox. Throw that soapbox away.
Yeah, and you're right. And I've got some examples I could clearly give you on that. It's just one of those things that we got to try and fix. And you're right. I don't think that we can compare, in a sense, what an infantryman in the middle of combat's going through. But at the same time, uh, every day we go to work, we put the uniform on, we put the badge and gun on, and we're in the middle of it, and we're at least thinking about it. And certainly things like that happen, where you're just seeing tragedy after tragedy, or people living in conditions that are just beyond description. And it does mess your mind up. There's no question about it.
Absolutely.
So
If you're putting on body armor every day and checking your weapon to see if it's ready to go before you walk out, and every day you tell yourself, "I got to make it back home tonight," because this was the Wild West out here, and
yeah,
you dealt with this every freaking day, and you multiply this times 20, you have combined a whole lot of angst, fear, and just trauma. I compare it to
mm.
a combat veteran. I absolutely do.
I can
Especially in
see
modern
that.
day. I'm not talking about Civil War or World War II or World War One, where trench warfare, that was horrific. That's a whole different ballgame.
Mm.
But modern day war veterans probably deal with the same thing. I mean, cops probably deal with the same thing, except that nobody acknowledges it. It's like, hey, you wanted to be a cop, you signed up for this. Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
probably didn't sign up for that.
yeah. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Definitely a tough issue. Now, here's a question, getting kind of directing us back to the paranormal. Do you think that that stress, that PTSD angle, do you think that has anything to do with maybe the stuff that we see that we can't explain? Do you think it's either causing us to see something, or is it opening up other channels? Because I go back to the brain, and we really don't know what the brain is fully capable of. Do you think there's an influence there at all?
Yeah, my theory is because you live in fear, and if you say you're not in fear, then you were never a real cop. Because you lived in fear almost nightly, and it's 7 hours of nothing to do and 1 hour of extreme terror and stress, wondering if you're going to make it back home again.
Oh,
But
yeah.
because of that, you're hyper vigilant. You're constantly watching your six. You're always looking around. Even if a car drives past you slow, you're in your unit parked somewhere and a car drives past you slow, you're already wondering, what's this guy up to? Is he going to shoot at me? What's he doing? You're always hyper vigilant. You're hyper paranoid. You have to be. That's a survival instinct. You
Mm.
know, especially there was a period of time. I think it was like in the later 2000s where a lot of cops were being targeted, and then that was always on the back of your mind. It's just the last traffic stop I make. It's this call I'm running to an ambush. There's been tons of cops killed out here in New Mexico in ambush type calls. Show up at a house and get blasted. So because of those, I think you're always hyper vigilant. So you're always seeing things, and that brings you back into the paranormal because you're always looking around. You tend to see more stuff. Obviously, you're used to working in the dark.
Yeah.
You're used to working in the dark is important. What they teach you, keep your flashlight off. Don't illuminate yourself. So you're always sneaking around on the cover in the dark, and you're focusing on stuff. You're looking for stuff. So the ordinary person doesn't do that. The ordinary person has no idea.
No, that they don't, and we're constantly looking for a tag that's off something. A guy standing out in front of a store that maybe he's wearing a long jacket in the middle of the summer, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We just and it does open up different avenues of the brain. Now, whether that creates the PTSD issue or it opens up new avenues of the brain that causes us to see other things, I don't know yet. Might be an interesting study, though.
And people tend to deal with it differently. Like for me, it was an avenue to see more weird shit. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The other cop might just go home and beat up the wife. Like, I hate my job, I hate my life, and you're going to pay for it. While another cop might go home and just get stupid drunk, and he's becoming a raging alcoholic and hates his life. So there's different ways of dealing with all this stuff. So luckily, I picked a different route that I always thought it was great.
Bet you folks didn't know we were going to talk cop stuff tonight, did you?
But you just never know where this crap goes.
But it does. There is a connection between it all, and it's all once again going back to the mind and humans and how we think, how we interact, and what we see. So there's a lot to that.
And experiencing so much paranormal stuff as a cop, the weird calls, the weird houses, the strange people. I've got tons of stories of just weird stuff I've encountered as a cop that definitely gets chalked up as unexplainable and paranormal. But a cool one I can think of real quick, like I arrested this Native American kid one time. He was pretty young, like 22 years old. He was non-combative or anything else. He had a warrant. And on the way to the jail, we started talking paranormal because if you're cool with me, we'd always talk about paranormal. And since he was Native American, that was a definite conversation. But he tells me he when he was 17, I think he was 17 or 18 or something like that, he got in a really bad car crash, and he was dead. He said he was out and gone for a couple of minutes, and he said he's not scared of dying anymore. I'm like, why is that? And he goes, when I remember crashing, and then he goes, the next thing I remember, I was out near my home and I was petting my dog, and he said he had a golden retriever. He goes, I'm just sitting there petting my golden retriever. And he goes, life was just so peaceful, and it was great to see my dog. His dog had died like 2 years earlier. And he goes, I didn't see my dad. I didn't see anybody of my family members that passed away. I didn't see Jesus or God or any of the native gods they have or anything. He goes, I seen my dog. He goes, I was so content I didn't want to come back. He goes, I was just sitting there petting my dog, and life was great. And he goes, all of a sudden a light flashed, and he was back in the hospital. I'm like, that's a different one. That was good.
That is different.
Okay, so just to round off the police thing, I know we got off on the subject, but that's what this show's all about. And I'm not just talking about police officers. Paramedics and fire department and firefighters are in the same boat as us. Probably not as extreme because we said before, or I've said before, they don't carry a firearm. Their mission is one thing, to preserve life. Ours is, the same, but also watch their back and keep the bad guy from coming back. So it's a little different, but as far as trauma, I've seen young paramedics crawling over dead people, pulling them out of cars and stuff. They're like 17, 18-year-old kids. I'm like, holy shit, this guy, when he's 25, he's going to have a head full of crap. And I really hope that all the states and, somebody steps up one of these days and offers these people help without the embarrassment or the stigma. So like I said, I hope something changes about that. We're going to get back to our haunted stuff and talking about haunted items. I just did a Google search on haunted items, and my God, everything is freaking haunted. James Dean's car.
Well, we call it attachments in the business.
Yeah, exactly. James Dean's car, it was a fascinating story, and I've seen that before. I think the car was called Little Bastard. And not only did the car kill him.
That way.
Oh, well, you know your name. Not only did the car kill him, but the parts they took out of the car and put in other cars ended up killing people. The
Well,
transmission, the motor. I'm like, it just kept going on and on and on. I'm like, wow.
what was it? Flight 4.
Hmm.
It was the L-1011 that went down in the Everglades back in the 80s or 70s even.
Yeah, yeah.
And the ghosts of the crew keep showing up on other L10 showed up on other L-1011s that used the salvaged parts from that aircraft.
Yeah. And not only did
That
flight attendants, but captains and first
flight
officers,
engineer,
everybody.
the flight engineer in particular, kept coming back,
Yeah.
and
I'm like,
they would see him sitting in a seat in the cabin. They'd see him standing in the galley. Oh gosh, yeah. And once again, you're talking folks that are highly trained, highly skilled. Their job is to think and act logically under pressure, yet they're seeing figures that they can't explain, and they're all not lying.
and often they didn't even know that parts of the crashed plane was
Point.
in their plane. So,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
part of the galley or some cabinets or some furniture stuff was moved from the crash site into that plane, and they didn't even know. Why would they know? Why would they even care? Until they
yeah.
started seeing apparitions in that plane, and they put two and two together. I'm like, wow. So
I'm trying to look at the up that flight now. L 10, 11 ghosts. I'm looking this up, folks. That's what we do here. We go right to the L 10, 11 ghosts. That was Is it going to come? Yeah, Flight 401, Eastern Airlines Flight 401. Eastern Airlines doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, that was Ernest Borgnine starred in the movie they did on that. I remember that he played the flight engineer that kept popping up back on flights. They made a good movie about that a long, long time ago. It was in let's see, that was in 1972. God, that was a long time ago. That was a long, long time. 1972.
you
So
were probably celebrating like your 40th birthday then or something like that. What is
yes,
it
I'm
about?
sure.
What is it about like airplanes, ships, the Queen Mary? Lots of ships. There's the haunted ships everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Lots of airplanes. What is it about those things that makes them draws that kind of activity? Is it because a lot of people used to go there and just spend a lot of good times there and good memories or good memories? Airports, small country airports, are notoriously haunted for apparitions, and mainly because who owns airplanes these days? General aviation, small planes, old retired guys, old retired doctors, dentists, well-to-do old folks own
Hmm.
airplanes, and they spend their entire time at the airport in their hangar, tinkering on stuff and talking to other pilots and the hangar pilots they call them. They just never hardly fly because they're too old, but they just talk shit all day long. So
Hmm.
when they die, where would you go? Like, hey, this is a place I really enjoyed. That's where I'm hanging out.
Well, that's an interesting theory because, and I'm going to talk about the school in Fellsmere in conjunction with this, and it'll make sense in a second. In that old school, which we have documented all kinds of unexplained events, voices, things moving, all kinds of things. And we've been able to pretty much come to the conclusion there's a lot of kids in the old school, but there's not one documented event of a child dying or being injured in that school in the 80
Hmm.
some almost 80 years it was open. So why would we have activity there? Why would folks at the old airport just come back? One of the theories that I have heard and I kind of agree with is maybe when they come back they don't come back to where they died necessarily in the hospital or maybe from tragedy, but maybe they're returning to the places that meant the most to them at a time that meant most to them.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
absolutely. I would. And maybe they're not
Yeah.
stuck there
So,
forever. Maybe they're just doing the gamut. Maybe they're just visiting here for a while. And maybe that
oh,
would
I
explain why you only have, apparitions or hauntings or sightings at certain times or not all the time because they move around. Maybe like I'm at the airport for a while, if I'm the old guy that died, and then I might go to my wedding day or the cruise we went on next week.
yeah. Yeah, I absolutely think that's a huge part of it. I think people make the big mistake. Well, the thing that is haunting the entity that's haunting my house is stuck here. No, I think they come and go generally. I'm sure there's exceptions, but I think they do move around. We did an investigation one time at a house, And once again, it was just an experiment we did. I cannot sit here and tell you it is 100% accurate, but we clearly got answers from the entity we were talking to. Said, "Yeah, we come and go as we feel like it." And I'm paraphrasing, of course.
And when you get answers like that, that's hard to debunk or hard to explain off. Like, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I know. But that's why I think, like aircraft. There's oh, I wish Chris was online. He'd know about it. It was an Avro Lincoln. It's in a museum in England, and an Avro Lincoln was the next step after the famous Avro Lancaster bomber. It was the next generation. Um, and this was an aircraft that they were going to move to another museum. And actually, the guys in there created a ghost type thing to so that the other museum wouldn't take their bomber, and they won. They actually were able to keep it there. But then things started happening, and there's been some documentaries on it. I wish I could remember the air museum now, but they would put a recorder in the night. They'd hear the levers getting flipped in the cockpit
Mm.
at the pilot station. They would hear things banging around in there, and there was nothing in there at all. Um, so was that, and there was, I believe, a pilot who flew it, was the last to fly it. And they think he's the one that's still there because he loved that aircraft. So
And
once again, go ahead.
yeah, it's unexplainable. Because
Yeah.
how can something that you can't physically touch flip switches? Is it the thing that you can't physically touch flipping the switches? Or is the instrument cluster somehow possessed and it's just flipping itself on and off without any input? What's really, nobody knows. I mean, you would assume that it's the pilot and there's flipping switches because that's what he did.
Mhm. And
The
that's
same
all we can assume.
the same thing people say, why would graveyards and cemeteries be haunted? The easy explanation for me would be I miss my body. Because no matter where you are when you're dead, you're not the same as you were when you were alive, obviously. So
Yeah, that's an understatement.
maybe you're missing your body. I mean, maybe you just want to go back to the place where your body was laid to rest. I mean, the body was a pretty important part of your living life.
Mhm.
So maybe you just want to
Uh,
stop by and say, like, yeah, it's still there and it looks like shit. It's rotting away pretty bad.
they say that about you now, though.
Often, way too often. I don't understand it.
But those are all the questions, see, that we don't have the answers to. I go back to something I say a lot. All the people that have experienced things over the millenniums, they all can't be crazy, lying, making it up, or imagining it. So there's got to be something, and there's such a variation of things that occur to pigeonhole it into one explanation. It just doesn't cut it. And you know what, I don't like saying this, but maybe we're not supposed to know. Maybe that's why it's been so difficult for us to coalesce around finding the answer and coming up with the way to do it and the experiments to help. I don't know. I don't. Maybe we're just not supposed to know.
It could be an installed mechanism to keep you sane. Because maybe if you do know and knew everything, maybe you wouldn't, be able to handle it.
Or you talk to some folks, maybe it would inhibit the reason we're here again. A lot of people believe that this is just an iteration in your existence. You're here, then you go on to the next level to learn something else. I mean, I don't know. There's
Well,
just so many.
that comes to the meaning of life, and the meaning of life is makes no sense. Nobody
Mhm.
knows the meaning of life, whether it's us as biological creatures or even the meaning of life of plant-based, trees. I mean, what's the point of that? What is the point of a tree growing out of a seed, popping up, producing more fruit to produce more trees? Is it just there to feed us? Probably not, because many trees you can't produce or they don't produce fruit that you can eat. So what's their purpose? What's the purpose of us?
Wouldn't it be, yeah, wouldn't it be sad for somebody to say, this is it. When I'm gone, it's just going to black out. I'm not, it's it. It's over.
It seems like an awful
Isn't
lot
that
of work for
sad?
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. But isn't that sad? And I'm of the belief, and this is just my personal belief, there is a reason for everything, and there is a direction for, or there's a purpose for everything. This is just a stop for us right now. That's my feeling, but that's just me.
I'd like to think that, and I kind of agree with that in an agnostic kind of way.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think there's a place we all go to, and I'm gonna be holding hands with an old bearded guy for the rest of eternity. That'd be horrible. Life would be better because after about 2 days of holding hands with the old bearded guy, I'd be like, "What are we doing now? Can we go do something?" So that's one side, but the other side, I think there's a place because I've experienced apparitions. I've experienced ghosts. I know I'm not crazy, and I've known talked to tons of people. Well, that's yeah. I think there's something else out there. What
Yeah.
is it? Another dimension, like we've talked before. Do you just die here and continue somewhere else? Does your energy or your soul get recycled? Many religions believe in the recycling method where you get reincarnated. Maybe I'll come back as a
Mhm.
rat or something. But something must happen because what's the point of us otherwise? Just to sit there and propagate and have more kids to make sure that our gene pool doesn't die and continue eating so we don't die. And what's the point of that? In the big picture, why? Why are we doing this?
Well, some people feel there is no big picture. It is just we're organisms that come and go, and we've just evolved into this species that can happen to think. But I agree with you. There is more to it than that, and I truly believe that it's all connected. And there's a reason for everything. There's a reason why you and I ask these questions.
Yeah. And everything
We
thinks.
just
Some things don't think is at the level we're thinking on, but my dog
Mhm.
Higgins, he's probably got the education of a kindergartner. He's a pretty damn smart dog. Uh,
Mhm.
Everything has a form, whether it's instinctual or not. They're obviously thinking. If animals were running around without thinking, there'd be some weird stuff going on.
Hmm. Well, that's and those folks, those are the answers that we're seeking, and that's one reason why, once again, going back full circle, we got to figure out a way to we have to figure out a way to come up with the answers, or at least figure out a way we can all work together and at least
Can
get a group
can
of huh?
can trees be haunted?
We have a tree in Port St. Lucie. It's called the Devil's Tree. I personally believe that there is a lot of hype around it that has made it more than it is. But it's a tree in an area in Port St. Lucie where a known serial killer guy named Gerard Schaefer had actually killed some of his victims. And since I've been down that area since the early 80s, it's been refuted to have a lot of paranormal activity. One story, which is pretty well been debunked, the city finally made a park out of the area as it grew, and they tried to cut it down because of all the things that went on there. And there were folks that did some really bad things around the tree. They tried to cut it down, and the tree, it broke the chainsaw. Now, that's never been proven, but that would be an example of a tree being haunted or being have some sort of paranormal energy that is prevented. And the tree still sits there today. It still sits there today, but it's more in a park now, and nobody can mess with it. But back in the day, it was in the middle of the woods. It actually sat about a quarter mile from where my house was, and the only way you could get to it was on a dirt road. Yeah, we could go on with the stories there, but that would be a good example of a tree having some sort of energy to it that we couldn't explain.
Now, I believe trees can be haunted, and I believe trees have spirits. I believe the old Germans, the Germanic tribes,
Hmm.
pre-Christian, all believe trees have spirits. They used to carve effigies of the root man, called it a Wurzelmann, which is just an old bearded guy, made out of root. And in that folklore and that religion, you could call it a religion because that's what everybody believed in. Trees were alive. Trees had spirits. Knocking on wood and all that stuff came about from
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So
Huh.
yeah, I think trees could be haunted. But then if a tree can be haunted, what keeps my coffee cup from being haunted or
Well,
possessed or
uh,
have some?
possessed attachment, yeah. I think that's a little bit different than a tree because you can go back, I think, to the ancient pagan beliefs about everything that's alive and has energy in it, a plant, a tree, or whatever. I think that's a little
Exactly.
bit different than a physical being. But can your cup, with that great etching on it that you did, by the way, with a very,
Thank
very
you. Thank you.
cool alien on it, that's very cool. But can that retain energy of something that wants it to retain its energy? I don't know. What was that? There was an old TV show about that haunted Collector, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
Haunted
yeah, yeah.
Collector. They collected things in their museum, and the John Zaffis still collects them, as far as I know, items that are haunted.
It goes
So
back.
how does that happen?
First of all, you're right about the trees. I was just throwing it out there. Trees are a living
Okay.
thing. You know, it's alive like us. It might not be biological, but
Mhm,
it breathes, it eats, it does everything a living thing does.
mhm,
But going back to haunted items or attached items, the stone tape theory, and the way I explain that to people is,
mhm,
when they figured out how to put a human's voice on a vinyl disc and play it back, it's just a record. It's a vinyl disc, and it
mhm.
just has these grooves and scratches in it that retain that sound. So when you put a needle on there, it jumps over all these grooves and scratches and stuff. It reproduces these sounds that you put into it.
Mhm.
Why couldn't a ceramic pot do the same thing? Especially like the old Native American pots or any pots that you've made spinning with clay on. And
Mhm.
why wouldn't it be able to retain? They call it stone tape theory. So why wouldn't that big rocks or anything like that? Why couldn't it retain residual energy from the day it was made or from what it heard throughout time?
Well, once again, I don't think, as far as I know, and I admit there may be people out there that are consistently doing these types of experiments, but I don't think we've tried to figure that out yet. I don't think we've tried to figure out how that could
Right?
have happened in a physical sense, like you have in a recorder. Now, if you want to talk about the spiritual sense of how an item retains the personality or the knowledge or the voice even of somebody that's passed. I don't think we've done any experiments to see how that could happen as we could with a record player. And for those of you that don't remember what a record player is, it's that disc that's spun around on a.
They're making a comeback.
You think so? I
Analog
hope so.
analog music is making a big comeback because it just sounds
Oh,
cleaner
okay.
than digital music. But would that explain residual hauntings? Apparitions that do the same thing over and over again, or the person that's standing in the same place, or the door that slams over and over again. Is there some energy that's trapped within the structure of the building or the
Well,
wall, the
yeah,
floor?
I'm a big believer in we've got residual and intelligent haunts. An intelligent haunt is something that responds to you. Hey, are you here with us? And you get a voice that, yep, I'm over here. That would be an intelligent. But a residual that's like a tape that's playing over on a loop. Um, I think, in my opinion, and that's all it is it's energy that's trapped and something is triggering it at different times or different intervals that allows it to again show itself. I don't, there's a big debate whether, is that really even a ghost?
Yeah, yeah.
Is the residual haunting a ghost or is it just trapped energy? And if it's just trapped energy with no personality or anything like that, um, is that really a ghost? It certainly is paranormal, but is it really a ghost? And I think that all has to do with going back to the quartz, whether it be wood, quartz, water,
Yeah, yeah.
something is retaining that energy. And it's something is kicking it out and showing it to the world at certain times, in my opinion.
Like you just said, it's triggered by something, whether it's the moon phase, the sun phase, or the time of year or a holiday. Because we've all been there. We've all investigated places. And one time, once they're really active, you're getting EVPs. There's just a lot of stuff happening, and you come back the
Mhm.
next day because it was so good. You want to come back and collect more evidence, and the next day it's nothing, absolutely nothing. And you're thinking like, what happened? The night before it was crazy, and all of a sudden it's gone. It's all moved. So
Mhm. I mean, once again, what kind we need to do more study on that.
yeah,
We need to try if we're going to try. See, we can sit here and say all these cool things occur, and we could get the real thrill of that, getting that bump in the night or hearing the voice and that's fine. If that's all we want to do is just enjoy the thrill of seeing it. But you and I, we're detectives. That's what we did for a living, right? Finding the answers what we're about, and we've got to figure out a way to find those answers, or leave it go, one of the two. But just to enjoy it, no, just to get the thrill.
well, it kind of, in my mind, like I said, we'll never convince not even a two-thirds of the population that any of this stuff is real, and I'm not even trying to convince anybody. So essentially you're picking sides. One side says, I don't give a crap no matter what you show me. Your analogy of Abraham Lincoln coming and smacking you in the
Hmm.
face, you know,
Hmm.
they're not going to believe and they're never going to believe. And I don't care who presents the evidence or how well the evidence is or where it was stored. Nobody's going to give a crap. They're just always going to be able to debunk it and always going to say. So there's a group of us that have to take that torch and just carry it. And if you don't believe, then you don't believe, then don't waste my time. But it's us to continue on investigating, and maybe we come across the Holy Grail. I'm personally convinced that we're getting closer and closer to something big. Somebody's going to invent something. Somebody's going to come out or just stumble across something so ridiculous, that nobody's ever thought of, and you'd be scratching your head like, why in the heck has nobody thought of this? Uh, but I think we're getting closer to that point. It sure feels like it.
Yeah. And my brother and I have had this discussion a couple times. He feels like that's coming. He can't explain why, but he just says something is telling him
Yeah,
that
I feel that way.
time, yeah, something's happened. And I agree. I've kind of had that feeling for a couple of years now. Something's going to happen. And there's talk about in 2026 there's finally going to be this big thing with UFOs, some time travel. There's all kinds of stories out there right now. And I don't know if that's just messing with my head, but I felt for a couple of years now, something is gonna happen soon. Now, defined soon could be 5 months, could be 5 years. I don't know. But I just feel like we're on the brink of something.
And people like us who deal or work with this stuff, investigate this stuff, we know something's out there. I am 100% in. I don't doubt myself. I don't have second thoughts. Some of the things I've experienced, you could say, well, it could have been this, it could have been that. But there's other things I've experienced like 100%. There's
Mhm.
there's something else out there. The
Yeah.
one of my great I refer back to EVPs a lot because like 3 years ago, it's about 2 years ago now, I was out by my claim by myself, and it was daytime, and I'm just going to different mine shafts and stuff, and trying to do EVPs, and just pick up my recorder, ask questions, never got anything. And I
Mhm.
go back down to where that building, there's a small building there, and I go back down to the building, and I sit there and eat my lunch, and suddenly I get this feeling like this place feels a little active right here. I don't know where this feeling came from. I've been there for like 2 hours already, and I haven't felt anything. Now suddenly I feel something. So just out of a hunch, I pull out my recorder and I turn my recorder on. No, before I turn my recorder on, I hear a door slam. I was building, and I hear a door slam. And I look. The first thing I look for is wind, and there's not enough wind to slam a door. That's when I immediately turn my phone recorder on. I'm like, yeah, something weird's going on here. And I walk over to the door. I look at the door. I'm like, what could have slammed this door? What could have moved it? There's no rational explanation for this
Mhm.
door slamming. And it takes me probably about 3, 4 minutes to check out the door. And I go back to my Jeep and I sit down in the Jeep and I'm like, I played my recording back. There are 3 EVPs on my recording suddenly of
You
people,
remember that?
and I'm
Yeah.
like, what the hell? There's nobody else out here. Uh, two of the voices are kids. I'm like, no, no, this is, how do you explain that? That's not an imagination. This is not an artifact that got blown in from somewhere else. I'm not
Mhm.
picking up a random radio station. Uh, this was something that was mocking me almost as I was looking at the door. Because as I was walking to the door, I clearly hear a a little girl. It sounds like a little girl counting my steps, like 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, and then I hear a boy's voice say "bang." And the way I picture that in my mind is like two kids hiding in the bushes, and they're watching me walk across, and the kid is counting like I'm marching, like 1, 2, 3, and the little boy is like sticking his fingers out, going "bang." That's how I
Well,
see it in my mind.
and you actually had me listen to that EVP, and I heard the same thing you did, and you
And
didn't tell me what was said.
and the third thing we got right away was metal. That
Yeah.
there's a man's voice or a gruffy voice that says metal.
Yep.
I'm like, no idea what that means.
Yeah.
But to bring it all back to the essence of this thing is, where did this crap come from? There is something else going on out there, obviously. Most people don't pay attention to that. We do.
Mhm.
So anyway, EVPs are very important. I've said that a million times, and that's something anybody can try. This episode is going to be a little bit shorter because Larry has to go to court. He has to have his ankle bracelet removed. Finally, after 5 years, I can't believe
Actually,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's about time. They call it Florida jewelry, so It's a thing they brag about over there. They always wear
Unfortunately,
shorts.
unfortunately, stuff from the past still comes up and requires attention. So I got to go.
So we're going to cut this a little bit shorter. It's been over an hour, so that's plenty. I think we covered a bunch of weird stuff today, and
I
we
got more
appreciate you
stuff I want to
guys.
talk about too, though. Okay, we'll pick this back up next week.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys. If you're listening to this or watching this, it's better if you watch it because then you can see Larry's pretty face. Make sure you watch it on a big screen, though. And obviously, leave some comments, subscribe, like if you can. What keeps us motivated is if this channel grows, we'll grow with it. If it doesn't grow, then it just kind of feels like we're farting in the wind. And so, on that note, you got anything philosophical to say there, Mr. Ray?
Keep your mind open, keep believing, and join us as we talk about this stuff. Maybe together we'll all come up with an answer.
Sounds good. And we're going to put out an episode every week, 25 episodes. So they get uploaded to YouTube, spirits willing, every Sunday morning. Sometimes, like I said, the internet's weird, but I'm going to do my best. Every Sunday morning, you're going to have a new episode to watch. So make sure you watch these. Thank you guys. We appreciate you a whole lot. Bye.
See you next week. See you.